Hey guys, what's up? It's Alec Torelli, and today I got an awesome question for you guys. I hope you like this video. The question comes from my reader, Johnny, and he asks, what kind of lifestyle changes should people make when they are in their 20s? And what did you do? Now, I am flattered to get to make this video because I'm 30. So it's just like the fact that I can look back and I feel old saying this, like, what the hell do you know about your 20s? Just the fact that I could look back and see that 20-year-old Torelli is different than 30-year-old Torelli makes me humbled. That means that there's growth and maturity that happened there, but it also makes me, I don't know, just like, man, time flies and it moves so quickly. And like before I know it, I'm going to be 40. So doing this video made me reflect on what I'm going to be like at 40 and like what would 40-year-old tell 30-year-old Torelli and what should I be doing now anyway. It just all happens so fast. So like that perspective there is what I want to lead with. And just at 20, you have something that everybody else that you're looking up to or wanting to be, or who's your role model, or who has shit that you want, or is in a position that you want to be in. You have what they don't have. And that's what you need to learn. That's what you need to leverage in your 20s. You have what they don't have, which is time. And what a lot of people in their 20s are looking around and seeing and envying that other people have is money. And so what they end up doing in their 20s is they end up spending their time trying to achieve everything that the other people have to get what the other people have, because that's what they think that they want in the short term. And the problem is that they're not leveraging their biggest asset, which is time, to do things that they aren't going to necessarily be able to do as easily in their 30s and their 40s. So you have a lot of time in your 20s to make money. And what happens is I see a lot of people are impatient, and they have this typical cliche first world goal, which is like, I want to be a millionaire when I'm 25. And while that's noble and good, and yes, it would be cool, the reality is that you get rich slowly. And if you're going to, I think if you're like 22 watching this video and you're like, I want to be a millionaire like in a couple of years, the reality is you're either going to have to take ridiculous, unnecessary risks and take too much leverage to try and get to that point, or you're going to just have to get extremely lucky. But what I think would be a much more practical goal is to just take a step back and have as many experiences as you can have by the time you're 25, because you're going to have till you're 35 to be a millionaire, and your life isn't going to change. It's not like you need the $1 million at 25 to do anything. Like it's very arbitrary, and it comes from this bullshit of looking around on social media and seeing the highlight reel of everyone else's life and comparing your reality to everyone else's highlight reel and feeling inadequate. And that's just an unfortunate fact of the world that we live in, where people are making that comparison, and it's creating a disconnect and unhappiness. So I feel like we need to take a step back and realize that in your 20s, you have time. So if we could just take a deep breath and try and leverage something that other people don't have and that aren't going to have in the future, that would be the best thing that you could do. And a lot of people think that they get the priorities kind of twisted here. So like, well, if I make $1 million, then I can do all these bucket list things, and then I could retire earlier and get ahead, and then I'll have more money so I could do more things. And they're like, they misunderstand, I feel like, the priorities for what it takes to actually have the experiences that they want to have. So a lot of people don't actually want to have $1 million or $2 million. They want to have the life that they think having the $1 million brings. So they don't necessarily want the money. They want what they think the money implies. But what they don't realize is that with the money and with age and with the further you progress in your life in terms of time on this scale here, the more responsibility that you acquire. Your priorities may change, but even if they don't, you might now have a family, you might have a dog, you might have a kid, you might have a house, you might have a job, you might want to be the CEO, you might want to start your own business. All these things come with responsibility, and they come with compromises and strings. And so if you think you're going to be like the 35-year-old CEO with a dog and 2 kids and a wife that's going to drop everything and just move to Thailand because now you have $1 million, you're fucking delusional. So what you got to realize is that the thing that you have is time, and experiences are easy to have when you have time. They require time and freedom. They don't really require money. And the people that are like, oh, Alex, it's easy for you to say you had money in your 20s because you made a lot of money playing poker. Sure. But there's a lot of people that have millions of dollars in their 60s that can't go live in Thailand because they have responsibility. So it's not about the money. It's about the freedom. I know a lot of people, when I was 18, I dropped out of college to travel the world and play poker full time. That took me to over 40 countries, and I was really lucky to do a lot of cool shit in my 20s. Like I was making money at the time, so that made it easier. It made it easier, but my priorities were always there. My priorities were always experiences over money. So anytime, like if I had to make a sacrifice, I was willing to stay in hostels, to backpack, to get the experience at the expense of like discomfort or not caring that was the reality that I lived in, because the value to me wasn't the 5-star hotel that I could have afforded with the money. It was hanging around other 20-year-olds that were backpacking around doing cool shit. And that didn't cost a lot of money. It took courage to make that decision, and it took flexibility. So I remember I was backpacking around Australia, and I met a lot of people that lived in hostels, washed dishes, ate peanut butter sandwiches, made $7,000 a year, and they traveled the world full time. Everything they owned was in a 75-liter Kelty backpack, and that was their reality. That was their life. And they did it because their priority was that. Right? Their priority wasn't making $1 million when they're 25. So it's really important to define what your number one is, because you're always going to be making compromises for your number two, right? So if your number two is like, oh, I would like to travel, but only if I have $1 million, you're never gonna do it. You're never gonna do the bucket list things that you set out for yourself. And the bucket list things only get harder. Writing that book, or learning piano, or living in Italy, or studying a different language, whatever the fuck it is, only gets harder. And so you have what nobody else has, which is time. And if you can leverage that to get experiences, so that when you are 30 and you start, your priorities may change and you start to want to do, start that company or buy that house or have that dog and that 2 kids, you now have all the wisdom that comes with experiences, right? So like age, you see like 60-year-olds that are really immature, and you see like 20-year-old athletes that are very mature because they've lived through a lot of things. They've done a lot of things. And what makes people mature is, in my opinion, is a lot of experiences. So if you could bring those experiences to the table when you go to try and apply to get a job, or start that career you want to start, or do the things you want to do, you're going to have more experience, self-awareness, and maturity and wisdom to execute on those things effectively. So being patient is the game, and really the game is just to step back and chill and like push your goals back like 5 years and do all the bucket list items sooner. Like that's the game, I believe, of your 20s. It's doing the things that you like in order of which you're not going to be able to realistically do them later. So if like taking 6 months off and sailing around the world or backpacking through Asia is something you've always wanted to do, like now is the time. So like if you have any money saved or whatever, like teaching English as a second language in Asia, or like doing anything to do the things that are important to you or exciting to you that don't necessarily make you money, but that give you life experience, that's the game. So I wouldn't be focused on making a ton of money in my 20s or worrying a ton about my long-term career. Even though that sounds like counterculture advice, doesn't mean you should like throw away all your hopes for your future and just be completely irresponsible. But it means that now's the time to take risks. So if you want to try to open a startup company that you've always wanted to try, do it. But if that's conflicting with your number one priority, which is like to do something like travel, realize that the company is going to be there in 5 years or 6 months when you get back from that trip. But it's going to be harder to take the trip once you're all in on opening a restaurant, right? So do the things in order that get harder and be realistic about that process. That's the game. And the way you do that is my number 2, which is to stop caring and giving a fuck about the opinions of other people. So a lot of people know this stuff. It's not like I'm saying anything that you probably haven't heard somewhere. It's not like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, like I see that 20s is a good time to take risks. Everybody tells you that. Oh, everyone says you're young, you have time. Like, why is everyone telling me that? It's because it's true. And like, you know that. But there's the opinion of someone else that is probably preventing you from taking action to some extent. So it's what's my dad going to say? What's my mom think? What do my friends say? What are my girlfriends going to say? What are the people on Instagram going to say if they see that this, what's the public going to think? So there's the opinion of someone else may be higher than your own priority, which is a problem. That creates a disconnect. So when the opinion of someone else is more important to you than your own priority for your own life, you're going to not take action. So not a single person when I was 18 told me that dropping out of college to play poker was a smart decision. There wasn't like I had this like massive support group that was like, oh my God, Alec, so genius. Like you just thought of the next idea. Like, wow, totally go all like, no, it worked and I was able to execute. And yeah, I got lucky along the way, sure, to be where I am, but I believe it was the right decision for me at the time. But the reason I was able to have the courage to do something like that is because my opinion of what I wanted for my life was more important to me than what someone on Instagram thought about me. We didn't have Instagram at the time, but it was more important than what like the people at college were going to think if I dropped out and I didn't make it. Like I was going to have to listen to them being like, I told you so. But I didn't care about that because the opinion of other people didn't matter as much to me as what I wanted. And that doesn't mean I'm selfish or arrogant or anything like that. It just means that like the priority was right. Like I still respected the opinion of other people. I asked other people what they thought. I listened to their other opinions. I took that into consideration. It was important to me. It just wasn't as important to me as my own. So when it came time to comparing those two things, I had the priorities right. Like my view was number one and the other people's view was number two. And anytime the other people's view becomes number one, you start doing shit that you actually don't want and you're blinded by the opinion of your parents, your friends, your girlfriend, etc. And then that's like how you end up being older with regrets and doing shit you don't want to do. So it's really important to stop caring what other people think. In your 20s, you care a lot what other people think. In your 40s, you care less. In your 60s, you realize they aren't thinking about you in the first place. A great quote by the founder of Kinko's. So that's like the how, right? And that's something that's hard to do. Like it's easy to say. And I think I'm really empathetic to where people are today and the world we live in with social media where we're seeing other people's highlight reel and we're being judged all the time. Like you put out a piece of content and like you're being judged all the time by other people. And it's so easy for people to troll on social media, whatever. And so I get that's really hard to do, but that's the reality we live in and that's the game. The third thing I would say is to plan for the future and really to realize that you're going to be 30, you're going to be 40, and your priorities will change. And so when that happens, the decisions you make in your 20s will ultimately dictate where you are in your 30s and 40s. One thing I didn't do well enough in my early 20s, I was lucky to make a lot of money playing poker. I did very well from 18 to like throughout my 20s playing poker. But one thing I didn't do well enough was save money. And it wasn't like that I would go back and advocate like not having experiences. I think every dollar I spent seeing a new country was absolutely worth it. So the trip I took to Australia, the time I moved to Australia or moved to London or backpacked around and stayed in we did it a little nice, but stayed in like 8 countries in Asia, like all worth it. Like every single dollar was worth it. But the decisions that were silly were spending money unnecessarily because I cared a little bit too much about the opinions of others, or I just wasn't responsible with the money I made. So when I made a lot of money, the first thing I did was went out and bought an M6 BMW. I bought it brand new in cash and I invested another $15,000 to make the car look nicer. Like, sure, like reward, like if you had, like I did win like a lot of money playing poker when that happened, but like I could have bought it used and saved 30% and just been smarter. I could have bought like a little bit less than nice of a car for half the price. Like I could have done a lot of things that could have still gotten me 80-90% of the satisfaction, but saved 50-70% of the money and put that money into like better investments for my long-term future. So I was lucky to meet my wife when I was 24 and she whipped my ass into shape and I got my shit sorted and that was great. But going back, I would say if there was one piece of advice I give to most 20-year-olds, it would be like open a Roth IRA, max it out to $5,500 each year, save as much money as you can, and basically put a tax on yourself to say, you know what, every dollar I make, no matter what, I'm going to save, 20% of what I make, because when I'm 30, I'm going to want something. And the reason why this is so hard when you're 20 is you don't know necessarily what the fuck you're going to want when you're 30. So it's like, it seems so abstract to think like when I haven't even met my wife, I'm going to want to have 2 kids with her and a dog and put those kids through college and then buy a house in like a different city and then maybe have a second house so I could go on vacation sometimes and have money to travel. Like those things seem so abstract right now because it's so far away from where you're at when you're 20. And so I understand that it's hard to save for those things that seem intangible. And I'm giving you advice that I didn't take as well myself, so I understand if this is difficult. But looking back, this is what I would say would be a huge game changer, especially in America where we have a culture that entices people to spend and consume. I think it's even more important to give yourself options. So I heard a great quote that the option that's the best is the one that gives you more options, and money gives you options and financial freedom gives you those options so that when you're 30 and you want to start that business or you want to buy that home or you want to have a family, you have options to make that happen, which gives you more possibilities. So that would be a huge one. Finding ways to save money would be huge. That's my advice. Those are my 3 things. Try more shit, be patient, stop caring what other people think, plan for your future. And like, if that would be the blueprint for the 20s, and just chill, man. Like, you got time, and I would trade everything I have except my wife, to be in your spot. And realize that like everyone that's 40 wants what you have, and you have something that is the most finite, precious resource in the world, which is time. And that's something you can never get back. So enjoy it, have as many experiences as you can. And that's something that I'm really confident saying you won't regret when you get to be 30. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up. More awesome content coming your way. Share it with someone that's 20 that needs this advice too. And you guys are awesome. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.